Summary Judgment. I'm Rachel Baird, and I'm joined by Ed Peruta. It's Saturday, July 18th, 2020, and we're transmitting live from the American News Media Center in Central Connecticut. Good afternoon,
Central
Ed.
Connecticut, how are you?
Good. How was this week for you?
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Dental work and knee problems.
I did not think that I was going to be here today because they did what I have implants in my lower jaw. They got infected. I had to get them fixed. And I didn't realize how painful it was going to be. And, but I'm fine. I'm fine.
Well, you're fine for at least the next hour, right?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Gary Nance, for sending us a subject that we're definitely going to address on this show, something that happened in a town called Rockwall, Texas. Did you know where that was, Ed?
I did not.
Apparently it's north of Dallas.
Northeast of Dallas, east of Plano, Texas.
East of Plano, Texas. And it's kind of an interesting case where somebody was arrested for giving the middle finger to a police officer. Do you have anything other than that to get out of the way before we get on to that subject?
I do.
Okay.
Our program is called Summary Judgment.
Talk show.
Right. It just doesn't, it's not just the talk show. This program is Summary Judgment.
Talk show.
Sometimes I believe it's necessary for the public to render decisions or summary judgment in the court of public opinion.
Sure, and we've addressed this probably for the past 6 years, but just every once in a while, not constantly, but as many of you probably already know without us telling you, summary judgment is a mechanism used in courts, both federal and state, to throw out cases before they reach a jury. A judge will look at the motion, affidavits, evidence filed by the moving party. They'll look at the opposition papers, and they'll determine whether a reasonable trier of fact could rule or find a verdict in the plaintiff's favor or in the counter plaintiff's favor. And if not, and the judge decides that, then the case never reaches a jury, and the judge decides it on his or her own, and you don't have a chance to present your case.
So I was reading the Hartford Current, and I used to like to do a show called I Read It in Bold Print.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have been happier to read what I'm reading in bold print in the Hartford Current, because I believe it confirms the reason we named this show Summary Judgment Talk Show. Here is the bold print from the online edition of the Hartford Current. This pertains to Connecticut and Connecticut only. Towns worried they won't find insurance to cover police abuse claims if lawmakers restrict legal immunity for officers.
I'm going to make some notes. Go ahead.
Okay? Now that was that one. Then we have, hold on a minute, I got to get it. I'm sorry. State police union chiefs. Now, that must be the state police and police union chiefs, or the state police union chief, and the union may have more than one chief, but state police union chiefs seek to preserve legal immunity for officers as lawmakers hold hearing on a police accountability bill. Now,
so there was a hearing yesterday in our state legislature before the Judicial Committee on police accountability, and I guess a lot of people testified via Zoom.
Some people testified in Zoom. There were 155 people from what I understand. Dan, our Dan, is very aware of what's going on, and we have another friend, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's going on. Well, Tom went up and testified.
Mm-hmm.
By Zoom, or he went by Zoom.
Could have been Microsoft Teams.
And
I don't know which.
When he started talking, they cut him right off.
No, I didn't know that.
And he's the person who knows about police impropriety.
Well, was it a 3-minute limit and they cut him off because he went over?
I don't know the particulars of that, but okay.
Because I was going to address it about the Brady list and how I've been trying for 6 years to ensure that there is a Brady
Well,
list in Connecticut.
let me just say this, because now I've thought about something else. Last week we showed you a body camera video clip from the Torrington Police Department with Officer Quarles,
Now retired.
now retired. Now my question is this. They evidently, from what I understood, maybe you told me, they had a retirement ceremony.
Well, they're on the Torrington Police Department's Facebook page. They show Officer Quarles, and I don't know if it's Chief Baldwin or somebody else next to him, and they're congratulating him on his retirement and saying a lot of very, very positive things about him as of January 20th, 2020.
Here's the question I have. When you retire from a police department, you should be able to obtain, what's it, H422 or H22?
Yeah, LEOSA, Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act permit to carry.
Right. Retired police officers are entitled to have a pistol permit where they can carry anywhere.
I mean, there are still exceptions, right, but
it's my understanding you have to have retired in good standing.
yes.
Has the department, Torrington, written any document saying that Officer Quarles retired in good standing?
That's a good point.
Because the chief, when he decides whether to issue a permit to a private citizen, must assess suitability and arrive at a decision regarding suitability.
In Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if a person is known to the chief to have an explosive temperament, if a chief knows of a citizen who, without probable cause or reason, grabs somebody and hassles them and tosses them around, would the chief issue a permit to that person, considering to him to be of good moral or good suitable character, a suitable character? So,
but what if the chief doesn't issue that, and it's revealed that this officer was with the department for, I think they said 25 years, and it's revealed that everybody knew in the department that this guy was kind of the enforcer. He's big, he's pumped. You send him out when there's problems that you want to take care of, when there's people that are you're always having to respond to their address, and you don't give this guy a letter of good standing. He says, whoa, wait a second. I did all the dirty work for all those years, and everybody knew about it, and nobody seemed to care then.
About it.
Yeah.
When I got off Wethersfield, I was called up to what is now a defunct daily newspaper called the Hartford Times. I never met with an editorial board in my life. But I went up and they invited me to address the editorial board of the Hartford Times. And the first thing they wanted to know is, well, Ed, we know that you got let go under questionable circumstances. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about the Wethersfield Police Department that you're taking out with you that you know about? Meaning, rat on everybody, turn the department upside down, tell who's doing this, who's doing that, this, that, and other thing. I refused to do it. I said, that's not why I came here. Now, that is one of my topics, is suitability, Torrington. Legislative hearing on police transparency. I was going to go and testify. I couldn't.
Well, but you don't have to go anymore. It's all video.
Well,
but you couldn't even talk.
You're right.
You couldn't even talk.
Now, I'm gonna say this. I would have said to the legislature of Connecticut, to the committee that was hearing it, the most valuable part of transparency is protecting the rights of citizens who decide to record, whether audio or video, police activity.
It should be number one.
If you stop and think today about the incidents that are causing all of the turmoil in this country, somehow, some way, those incidents were captured on video.
Can anybody think of an incident that has caught the nation's attention based merely on somebody's word where there wasn't a video? I can't think of one when it comes to police. I can't think of one.
I have. Oh. I've got 40 something years, 50 years worth of recording public safety incidents, fires, accidents, homicides, plane crashes, riots. I've done that. And I've always been hassled by police officers, not every time, hassled by police officers attempting to document with a video camera, and I started with a still camera, police activity, EMS activity, fire activity. I went to the police academy. I know what a debris and evidence field is.
Mm-hmm.
We somehow need to protect citizens explicitly, because we all now have the ability to document police misconduct.
And they actually made a law in Connecticut,
They did.
presumably to protect individuals and providing a means of civil action against the employers of police officers if they interfere with recording activity. But there are so many exceptions to that law that it eats up the law. The exceptions...
It's swallowed by the whole.
Right. So we really don't have a law.
It was added at the end, and it was swallowed by the whole.
Yeah, yeah. It's useless.
Now, if you, on the other side of this camera, were to decide to take the time to send an email to your representative in Washington
Mm-hmm.
or to the White House in the next 5 days, they can't be 100,000 letters over 2 months. It has to be a flood of letters coming in, okay? Ask the president to watch this program. No, ask the president or a staff member to watch this program.
Mm-hmm.
It is in fact imperative that we now be able to use the non-violent tool called the camera to document what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have one more topic, and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, I don't have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The passing of Representative Congressman John Lewis, an icon in the fight for civil rights. Okay? And I lost respect. I respect everything he did for civil rights. But when he sat down on the floor of the House of Representatives and somewhat orchestrated it, no. Sometimes you're not known for what you did in life. You're known for the last thing you did in your life. And my example of that is, and I always used to ask people, trivia question, who was the most decorated soldier of the Revolutionary War?
I don't know.
Ariel, do you have any idea who the most decorated soldier of the Revolutionary War was? Benedict Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
The traitor who wanted to give up West Point to the British. He had flipped sides and became a British operative, fled the country, and lived in England for the remaining the remainder of his life. But Benedict Arnold is not remembered for the heroic deeds he accomplished as a person fighting for independence. He is remembered for the last act he did in trying to deliver a military installation to the British.
You know, we had a experiment like that in my first year of law school where the book, our class book, described an individual and what they had accomplished and where they had come from and certain other principles. And when you read it, you thought, oh, this was a great American. You know, sounds like a great guy. And then it's revealed at the end that it's Richard Nixon. You know, and when it comes to that, you're right, because you say the word Richard Nixon, and it's difficult for a lot of people to think about anything good he did or anything positive, and he's remembered for one or two things, and that's it. But he did raise himself up from a position of poverty, I believe.
He was raised as a Quaker.
Very difficult, yes.
He was raised in poverty.
Right.
And went into the Army.
And look where he ended up.
He was out in the Pacific. He fought in World War II.
Nixon?
Nixon.
I did not know that.
I think Obama. Who was the president before Obama?
I know. Was it Bush?
Yeah, Bush.
One of
Every
Bushes.
president in the United States that, to my knowledge, was in the military. The first president not to have been in the military was Barack Obama.
Clinton. There's no way
Oh
Clinton
no,
was
I'm
in
sorry.
the military.
I'm sorry, Clinton.
No, there's no way.
What I'm saying to you is this: is that
Reagan wasn't in the military, was he?
he was.
Was he?
Yeah, he
Okay.
was. He was in the publicity. You know, Jimmy Stewart.
Now, who was the one that was just in the National Guard and they made a big deal over that?
Bush.
That was the Bush. Okay, that was the
Where
Bush.
they said he didn't make drills and whatever.
Right,
But
right.
that's neither here nor there.
I know.
What I'm saying is, you're right. You tell a story about somebody, but leave out the very last couple of years. Even as a vice president, he was fine. Ran for president, and I think it went to his head.
Yeah, but the things he was doing when he was elected as president, I'm sure there were foreshadowing of that and other things he did along the way. Correct? That wouldn't be just something to start.
Richard Nixon, I believe, was a truly patriotic American who couldn't live by our rules. I think that Donald Trump, without question, is a dedicated, loyal American. But he is serving in a very difficult period of time. Nothing he's going to do is going to raise him up in the eyes of certain people.
And you know, one could argue that when you have a president and there's so much pressure put on him, so much of unacceptance of his position, it drives him to do things that only lead to additional criticism. It's hard to know what kind of president Donald Trump would have been if he would have had the support of even, you know, 3/4 of the country, let's say, or even if the country had accepted him as their president. Maybe they don't agree with everything, but we'll never know that. We'll never know.
Well, all I can say is we live in difficult times. I was saying to somebody this morning, life is going to be different. And I'll
But you know what I read today about this whole thing about difficult times. Picture somebody born in 1900. Now I hope I get this right.
Go ahead.
Okay, so they were what, 14 or 15 when World War I started. They were 18 or 19 when the Spanish flu came. They were how old when Hitler came to power? How old when the Great Depression occurred? 29. How old when World War I came? It's kind of easy because they were born in 1900, so it's easy to calculate. You know, 40, 45. They were there for the Korean War in their 50s. They were there for the Vietnam War in their 60s. You know, talk about having a lifespan through difficult times.
My grandmother was born in 1879. That made her 21 years old at the turn of the century.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother saw the rise of the automobile. She saw the rise of radio.
Well, those things sound like good
She
things.
saw the rise of television.
Mm-hmm.
She saw a human being set foot on the moon. She went through all of what you're speaking about. The Spanish flu pandemic, World War I, she went through the Spanish-American War.
Forgot about that
Okay? When Teddy Roosevelt was riding up San Juan Hill.
one. Yeah, that was kind of limited in scope of certain. I don't know how much that affected
understand,
people actually
but
living in America.
Only in 2020 do we realize that it wasn't sabotage that sank the Maine and Havana Harbor. It was an explosion of the boiler.
Yeah.
But only in the last 30 years did we realize that the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. Okay, Robert McNamara, the defense secretary at the time, on his deathbed, admitted it.
And you know, I mean, people talk about the media now, but you know, the Spanish-American War, that was all the Hearst newspapers making that stuff up to sell copy.
Right.
They still do it.
Right.
You know, the media hasn't changed
No.
at all.
No.
It's a profit margin.
Who's gonna?
You know what I always enjoyed when I didn't enjoy it, but when we would attempt to video record court proceedings in Connecticut, which, my God, now they had a hearing last week where two guys who've been in jail for 30 years since they were 17 were finally exonerated after it was shown that the evidence at their trial was false. Dr. Henry Lee, known mainly nationally for the O.J. Simpson trial, Dr. Henry Lee testified that a substance on a towel was blood, when in fact it hadn't been tested. And I don't know when they tested it, but it must have been many years later, maybe recently, and that's why they're exonerated. It turned out not to be blood. And there was absolutely no other evidence of them being present at the scene whatsoever. 30 years they spent in jail, Ed. But my point is, and I forgot what my point was, they live streamed from the Torrington courthouse their release last week. And I think we're going to do a half-hour show.
No. Just I apologize, but I need to stand up for a minute.
Okay.
And just.
Now, another interesting fact that you've just reminded me of that came out of court, and I do have sympathy for you, Ed, but if you want to stop, we'll stop, okay?
I'm not stopping.
Okay, so I'm going to go on. Stay strong. Ed was sitting in a courtroom in Connecticut one time. I think it was back in January.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing. He wanted to stand up in the courtroom, and that time it was because of his back. Judge was on the bench. When he stood up, and he went to the side to stand, a marshal approached him and told Ed that he could not stand in the courtroom.
Sit or leave the courtroom.
Either sit or leave the courtroom. And Ed told the marshal, he said, well, I need accommodated because I cannot sit, and I'm here to support my niece who has a domestic problem with her son. So I need to be here for her. It wasn't even their own business. You were just a normal spectator there to support a victim.
Right.
And you stood up, and so then the judge gets involved because Ed talks a little loud. You wear hearing aids, you have a little hearing issue, so you do talk loud, although I have a feeling you always talk loud even before the hearing loss.
I need to just interject one thing.
Okay, boy, we're just going stream of consciousness today.
I knew that I was in the courtroom. I knew that the judge was doing an arraignment, okay? I didn't want to interrupt her, and I was whispering to the marshal. I said, Marshal, I have a disability. I can't stand up. I need an accommodation. And then I'll be able to sit back down. And through the course of the event, I was threatened with arrest, and I was told that I had to go out into the lobby. And then the judge saw the activity going on, and I tried to talk to her, and she basically shut me down.
Like any good, like any good judge.
Like any good judge.
She immediately took one side refused to hear what was going on, refused to hear the facts, rushed to judgment, took the side of authority, and told Ed to get out of the court, like any good
Right,
judge would do.
and then made the fatal mistake of on the
God
record
forbid
saying,
she ever presides over a trial.
and saying, and you can come back in when your case is called. And I said to her, I'm not a defendant.
I'm here to support a
I'm
victim.
I'm here to accompany my niece. You know, so yeah, and that was my leg. And now, just to let everybody know, they're replacing.
That was your back.
That was my back. They're replacing my knee on August 24th.
But to get back to where we all started with
Yeah.
this, they live streamed a case out of a Connecticut court. And it's only been a couple years since we started video recording in court, and you would have thought that we were criminals just making the request, right, Ed? When we would go for a hearing, because in Connecticut, parties can object, and then you go for a hearing, the prosecutor actually said, Your Honor, they're looking to make a profit off of this. Well, number one, we weren't going to make a profit off of it. And number two, even if we were, isn't that what the news stations do? It's called advertisers. Isn't that what the newspapers do? It's called subscribers and advertisers.
Ratings-based advertising dollars.
So why is it okay for big corporations to make money on things, but me and Ed, American News, no?
The real reason is the courts want to control the narrative.
That's over.
Of what goes on in their courtrooms.
Yeah, COVID dispensed with that.
I maintain that if the media committee of judicial was to permit the live streaming of criminal arraignments and criminal trials for a 6-month period, okay, the public would be up in arms at what they see going on in the courthouse. Now, and the reason I'm twitching
but
is I've got my leg up on a pillow on a chair.
Right, sort of like when cameras started infiltrating police activity, people got up in arms, right?
They saw with their own eyes a rendition or a video of what is alleged to have happened, and I'll tell you why I say that.
So the courts are the last bastion that we need to challenge. Maybe body cams should be worn in the court, Ed.
Police officers in the field are afraid that they won't be able to write a true and correct report if there's video out there that says otherwise.
Well,
what
do you mean a true and correct report? How could a video say otherwise if the report's true and correct?
Okay, let's assume that the officer goes back and writes a report. And he says she was arrested because she said the gun was locked in a lockbox in the house, and it wasn't. Okay? And so that was interfering with an officer or interfering with an investigation. We placed her under arrest. I got it. Don't get me wrong. I got it. But we all know that television, Hollywood, can do a pretty goddamn good job today of showing private citizens called actors dressed in uniforms with badges and guns, beating up people, on street people or whatever, or, whatever.
Yeah.
So when I say that the video that's captured on one camera, and in some cases on several cameras, has more credibility than anything that police officer can write, because it's multiple. Each person didn't have the same script. You follow what I'm saying?
I do.
That we now are an army of photographers for justice. I believe that there's a website, Photography is Not a Crime, But I believe that if Dave Warden at University, News Now Houston is listening. Dave, photographers for justice,
Nice.
videographers for justice. And I think that if I can, I'm going to go get another goddamn YouTube channel called Videographers for Justice.
Oh, so let's talk about what happened in Rockwall, Texas. Apparently, there's a convenience store there called Racetrack, RACETRAC. We don't have them up here in Connecticut.
No.
Just like down in Florida, they have what are they called? Those places I like.
Wawa.
Wawa. They have really good food and sandwiches there, but we don't have those here in Connecticut either. But there was an incident at a Racetrack convenience store gas station back on January 23rd, 2020. And there was a gentleman involved named, what was his name, Ed? Winston Noble. And it looks like he actually has a YouTube channel where he posts things along these lines. And the officer, what you looking up?
First Amendment Chicago middle finger.
Okay.
There was a Supreme Court case that said
It's hard to do research on the fly.
My fingers don't fit the phone.
Right.
And I didn't want to talk while you were talking. I figured you had their attention. I would look it up to
Here,
see if I could find it.
let me see if I can look it up on my computer.
Because I think that it's important
Okay.
that this issue did come up, and I think it was in 1968.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Okay. But you have to get all of the. You know how to do that. First Amendment, middle finger, Chicago.
Okay. Got it, Ed. Thanks.
Freedom of speech. And if it doesn't work with them.
Okay. Well, why don't I do the research and you continue talking, okay?
Okay. Well, I don't know. Okay. A person in the parking lot sees a police officer, I guess, driving by, flips him off.
The police officer was engaged in a traffic stop.
Okay.
And he finished the traffic stop, and he saw this person, Mr. Noble, I guess, Knowles, N-O-L-E-S, raise his middle finger towards him, and the police officer interpreted that as
good job!
A sign of disrespect.
Good job!
Okay. And we, at least here in Connecticut, and I'm not sure if every state has this, but it's harder to breach a police officer's peace than it is just a civilian. Because supposedly the police officer's job is one of rough and tumble, and they should be more thick-skinned than the average citizen because of what they have to deal with every day, and they can't be so thin-skinned that they're reacting to every insult like maybe a civilian would react, right?
They're paid to be in a job at locations where breach of peaces will take place, and people will be upset with you, and people will say things about you to you or flip you off.
So I think there's actually a Wethersfield case, Wethersfield, Connecticut, where Dante, remember him? He had like a beef with the local police officers, and he would flip them off. And the Connecticut courts found that he wasn't breaching the officer's peace by doing that.
Okay, you found Dante.
Dante Loretto. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, yeah. You couldn't breach an officer's peace. And so this officer in Rockwall, Texas, was imaginative.
He said, "You can't breach my peace. Let me see if I can find somebody's
Look
peace
around.
he breaches."
Did anybody else see that? Did anybody else come to me and complain about it? Did anybody else see it? So he approaches Mr. Alejandro Rubio.
A true Englishman.
And says, "Hey."
Did you see that?
I'm reenacting it. It may not be exact. I haven't seen a video of it. "Hey, Mr. Rubio, I saw you looking over at that guy. Well, what do you think of what he did?"
Whoa, 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 whoa. We had a conversation about this upstairs.
Yeah.
The officer attempted or tried or did read the expression on Mr. Alejandro's face, and then approached him saying, like, "Were you upset?"
Mr. Rubio stated, "Oh yeah, I watched Mr. Rubio look at Mr. Knowles as he was making the offensive gesture, and the reaction on Mr. Rubio's face was complete shock. Like, good for Mr. Knowles. I can't believe he did that.
Or, I got a better
I wish I had the guts to do that.
What? No, I was going to get to that. Or what if this person came from a country where if you did it, you got shot, saw him do it and goes, wow, I didn't realize you could do that in the United States.
I love America.
I love America.
But then, good point. Then the officer approaches Mr. Rubio, and he says something to Mr. Rubio. I don't know what, but here's an officer clearly approaching your car, and you know what answer he wants. That officer,
especially as a minority, you don't want to fuck with the officer. You want to do exactly what the officer wants, for fear that it'll come back to bite you in the ass.
In other words, that officer isn't coming over there to hear you say, I saw that, I couldn't believe it, I totally support what that man did, officer, and I wish I had the guts to do it.
Go fuck yourself and get out of here.
The officer's not looking for that, is he?
No, he's not.
Mr. Rubio knew what that officer was looking for, and in the report, according to the officer, this is what Mr. Rubio said, I can't believe that Mr. Knowles was being so rude. Now, did he say that he was annoyed or alarmed or shocked or offended? Did he say any of those things, Ed?
I don't know. Was there a body camera?
I don't see it mentioned in the
I
police
know.
report. That doesn't mean there's not one, though.
I know.
You gonna make it?
Yeah, I'm gonna make it.
Okay.
This is my knee right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so then what did the officer do? He took Mr. Knowles into custody.
Yeah.
And charged him with breach of the peace, transported to the county detention center, and was released to jail staff without incident. Now, the document we have does not show a judge signing off on probable cause. This is an on-site arrest. It's not an arrest by warrant. Did a judge sign off on this warrantless arrest? Ed and I tried to look it up.
I feel bad because I think that the one person who could explain this better than us is Dave Warden.
I think a lot of people who are watching could probably explain it. And
in Texas.
Yeah, we looked up the district court. Was it 389 and 432 that deals with the county of Rockwall? I'm going by memory on that. We could not find a list of pending cases or anything like that. Okay. So that's what we need to find out to follow up on this.
Here's what I'm told. And I'm going to hopefully paraphrase Dave Warden. You can get arrested by an officer, and it's not considered an arrest until you're indicted.
Okay.
Okay? Because for a long time, Dave was waiting.
It may not be true for misdemeanors, but go ahead. I don't know. We
don't
know Texas.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know Texas law.
Yeah.
Dave Warden would eventually, I believe, watch this and explain it on News Now Houston.
What's going on?
But I know that it's not. You get taken in. It doesn't even say whether he was released on a promise to appear or put on a bond.
No, it doesn't say.
You know, because if you put somebody on a bond, okay, it means that he can't go anywhere.
Right.
He's stuck in jail unless he has the money.
Because the judge, the magistrate, has some options. Probable cause exists. It is ordered that commitment shall issue and the defendant shall be magistrated. Or no probable cause exists. Defendant is ordered released instantly. So the case can go on, my understanding, at least in Connecticut, even though probable cause isn't found by the judge, you just can't hold the person on bond if there's no probable cause.
Okay.
So that is pending additional information, Ed. Anything else?
Yes. I want to talk about this legislative hearing and trying to correct law enforcement. I believe that now that every officer is wearing a body camera, that when a chief has an incident, there needs to be some supervisor in the department who is reviewing body footage. And when you come across a bad situation on a body cam, somebody has to have the authority to immediately suspend without pay the officer.
I don't know. I mean, don't you think there's some due process?
Okay.
Number
no.
one, their collective bargaining agreements provide some due
Well,
process.
this is the issue.
How about progressive discipline? How bad was the incident? Is this the first time or is it the 100th time? I mean, come on.
The state police successfully had the Connecticut legislature seal from public view state police officers' discipline records.
They allowed it to be contained in a collective bargaining agreement as a enforceable provision. Now, bear in mind, a collective bargaining agreement is an agreement between the employer and the members. So the employer had to agree to that, which I guess they would want to agree to that, right? Come to think of it.
They all came up to it, right?
That would be a provision that the employer, the state police, and the union members would agree on. There aren't that many, but that one they would agree on, huh?
They would.
They would. That benefits everybody in the state police.
Well, all I'm trying to say is, and I'll say this for the 1000th time, because it needs to be on the program if somebody's watching, 40 minutes in. Nobody supports law enforcement more than I do. I don't support bad law enforcement. And I believe there has to be a way to immediately remove a bad police officer.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. In a municipality, if you are a town worker, and I'm not talking about a police officer necessarily, I'm just talking about some guy that works in the public works department or highways or whatever, if that person makes a statement out of frustration or venting and says, if I have to go do that today, there's going to be a mass shooting, that suspension is immediate.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to end up being terminated. I don't care what the work record is, what the discipline record is, that's going to happen. And you know what? Those are bad things to say, but you're not beating anybody up and nobody's dead, although you shouldn't say those kind of things. But I'm just saying, if speech can get you terminated immediately, then why shouldn't a physical attack result in the same thing? So I'm on board with you there to a certain
If
extent.
Officer Quarles was employed in any other business except government, and he grabbed any member of the public or co-worker the way Officer Quarles grabbed Mr. Johnson, he would be immediately fired.
See, I'm going to go with this, though. If he was employed in any other government position than law enforcement, he would have been let go. Because let's go back to our highway department or public work examples.
I know.
If that happened in the town garage, that person who grabbed the other person would be immediately terminated.
Right.
Like, okay, over there, get me that tool. No, I don't want to get you that tool. I said, get me that tool. No, I'm not going to get it. And then I attack the guy. I'm going to be terminated, whether that guy should have given me the tool or not.
What I'm trying to say is not that you're absolutely correct. What I was trying to do was to leave open the ambiguity, the unregulated, the decision-making, well, what are we going to do? There should not be a choice as to what are we going to do.
Yeah, but
there has to be something that says this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, but even in criminal law, there's not that. One person robs a bank and they get 10 years, somebody else gets 5 years, somebody else gets probation, somebody gets... That's because we look at individual circumstances.
I own Mary Maids.
He really doesn't.
I send women into houses to clean houses for families.
Disclaimer, he really doesn't.
This is hypothetical. And I find out that my employee robbed jewelry from one of my customers. He comes back. He's confronted because little did he know that they had baby cameras or hidden cameras that caught him on video robbing the jewelry box. And he wasn't paid to clean the inside of the jewelry box.
No.
Even opening it was taboo.
Right.
Right? He's let go immediately. Now, let's say the person is sitting in his office watching his video camera at his house. You know the thing about Ring where the guy at the office says, the cops are on the way. And he calls the police and the police go there. And they grab him. The owner of the house is able to show the police officers the video. The police officers aren't going to send him home. He's in the house. We have video of him going in the jewelry box, and he's got jewelry in his pocket. You're under arrest.
On site, right?
On site. You're fired. I am not surprised that Officer Quarles was permitted to retire. And I'll tell you why.
Well,
Because-
let me just clarify. He had the years in to retire.
But they permitted him to retire. Let's assume that they confront Quarles and they have the video. And they say, we're going to discipline you. He says, I want a hearing. They're going to terminate him, but he has to have all the hearings, all the steps, everything. It's going to cost Torrington a small fortune in attorney's fees and everything else to have all the hearings. But the easiest, most simplest way, the path of least resistance, look, I'll tell you what. You're going to retire. You're going to get your 25-year pension amount. I'm going to give you the letter of good standing because you haven't been investigated to a determination, and we're just going to let you go. That means that you'll be able to go to some other department in some other state with a letter of good standing and get hired someplace else. Bullshit. I think that they negotiated his earned retirement at 25, but if this hadn't occurred and this videotape wasn't out there and Mr. Johnson had not made an FOI request for that videotape, Officer Quarles would still be on the Torrington Police Department.
Yeah, I mean, we got to get the timing down on this. We don't have enough information. When did he first put in for retirement? Because you put in for it months and months ahead of time. So we don't know when he put in for it. This incident happened December 17th, 2019. He retired January 10th, 2020. It's close in time. When was the FOI request made for the video? That would probably determine when the video was viewed. And that would determine when the video was viewed. And if it was viewed before January 10th, kind of lends at least some beginning credibility to your statement. There's a lot more that needs to be known before we actually say that. It hasn't been ruled out, though, that there was a cause and effect there. So, yeah, we would need definitely a lot more information.
Do you remember the incident on the bridge going over the Thames River, is like Gold Star Bridge, Gold Star Memorial Bridge, where a state trooper.
Okay, can I just clarify that when you
Spina,
say the Thames River, you're talking about the one in Connecticut and not in England?
Oh yeah. In New London, Connecticut, there's a bridge that goes over the river just south of the subbase, and they call it the Gold Star Memorial. In other words, Gold Star Mothers.
Okay.
Okay. And a state trooper, Officer Spina, pulled over a motor vehicle operator and went absolutely fucking bullshit on him.
Just Google it. You can see the video.
Well, why don't you...
State Police, New London, Officer Trooper Spina.
And then add two more words to it.
Uh-huh.
Challenge coin.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I read an article this week that someone in the state police, or someone, has actually created a challenge coin. Okay? Those are little coins where military people exchange them. I have some. Okay? And supposedly it has Spina's name on it, and it says, "Sit the fuck down." they quote Officer Spina telling the operator, sit the fuck down.
Yep.
And I understand they may have the emblem of the Connecticut State Police on the other side.
Well, congratulations to whatever journalist figured that out. Nicholas Rondinoni, he's been around forever
Yeah,
with the Hartford
Rondinoni.
Current.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just Googled State Police Trooper Spina challenge coin, and it comes up. So the way I take that, Your Honor, Ed, the way
Yeah. I'll look at my robe on.
the way I take that is they're proud of his conduct.
The state police didn't make this coin.
But the members, the state police members, are proud of the
Somebody
conduct
made this coin.
at the request of troopers. Who else would request that?
I don't know.
Am I off? Did
I
you
don't
read the
know.
article?
I did, but I can't remember exactly what I read.
But what do you think it means? Do you think they made these coins because it's such a dark moment and we want to remember to never again do this?
I think that it's in support
Of Trooper
Officer Spina.
Absolutely.
Okay? He's getting ready to retire. Maybe he's retiring too in good standing.
Like it's sort of circle the wagons. We understand what you've been through, brother. These people are assholes and you're going to lose it sometimes with them. And you didn't do, you got caught, but it's nothing that all of us haven't done at one point.
Okay.
That's the way I took
This
it.
is we've got roughly.
We don't have to do a countdown. Do you want to go off
No.
though? You're tired?
No, I'm fine. I'm
Okay,
going now.
let's go.
I believe that there's a state statute that prohibits anyone from duplicating state police, the hat, the badge, the emblem, anything.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay.
I see that the emblem, that the badge is on there. Yeah.
Not now. But the emblem,
Mm-hmm.
that's a state of Connecticut emblem.
Yes.
Okay?
I don't see a hat on Spina. So, anyway,
No.
let's move on. Keep
All right.
going. What
So
does
what
that
I-
mean?
what I'm
We should
saying
find
is-
out who made that.
Absolutely. Because I'm sure it was a private citizen who made the order.
Oh, it's the Pearl Harbor Memorial Bridge.
Okay, I'm
They
sorry.
renamed it.
Oh, that's in New Haven.
That's in New Haven.
That's in
yeah.
New Haven, not
yeah.
in London. I thought
Okay.
it was the Gold Star.
What does
Okay.
that go over? The Connecticut River? Quinnipiac River? Quinnipiac, I think. I know. We need to study Connecticut more. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's not going over the Connecticut River because that's the Gold Star. No, I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm trying to say is that to me, coming out now, is breach of peace. Exchanging these coins is breach of peace. If you want to look at flipping somebody off as breach of peace, that's breach of peace.
And I think I think a lot of what's going on now with the demonstrations and the protesters, it's sort of with law enforcement because of the people they hire, that it's sort of a group mentality. We're all in this together. It's actually drawing them closer and making law enforcement feel like they're set upon and they need to defend each other and close ranks even more. I think a lot of it's having the opposite effect of what most people would want.
We are under siege
Yes.
mentality.
That's the mentality of this challenge coin.
Because
There's no doubt about it.
when you read,
In other words, we're separate from civilians. It's them against us. And it really shouldn't be that way, Ed.
when you read, and I'm sure there's supposedly 25 police officers, because Tom was telling me the number of police officers and chiefs who testified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that we need to get the transcript of that and who said what.
Mm-hmm.
But when a police chief can say, if you eliminate our immunity, we won't be able to buy insurance. Nobody will want to insure us.
You know, I like that you just said that because that's how you started out the show, and I made a note when you were saying that. And what the chief is actually saying is, if you take away our immunity, the things that we're doing will actually be subject to lawsuits, and we won't have a defense anymore. They're just going to look at whether it violates the Constitution, and we are violating the Constitution, so we need that immunity so we're not found, liable.
Let me add to that.
It's like,
You're right.
and this is the note I made. It's almost like if you're doing criminal acts, you're concerned that they're actually just going to look at what you're doing and not whether you actually knew what you were doing was wrong or realized what the consequences would be or could read the statute right. We're going to look at all those things to decide whether we're going to actually arrest you for that criminal act. Well, you know what? People engaged in criminal acts do not get that benefit of the doubt. In other words, criminals, and I say that loosely, criminals, the people that law enforcement considers criminals, do not get the benefit of the doubt. Police officers want the benefit of the doubt. I was watching one of these shows on TV about people that disappear. It's called The Perfect Murder on YouTube, but yet it's usually not about murder. It's called Disappeared or whatever. And in so many of these cases, people report that their loved ones disappeared, right? And the police are always like, oh, well, they could have taken off, who knows, blah, 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 blah. The police find every reason not to search for a missing person. And I'm thinking, how come when they're looking to arrest somebody, they don't look for every reason why that person might not have done it? It's just, do you understand?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I want to close with a remark. I find it offensive that a police chief can be worried about the cost of insurance. In other words, if you drive a car and you have 5 accidents a year, every year, nobody's going to want to insure you. If you have a fire in your house 5 times a year, nobody's going to offer you homeowners insurance. What I'm saying is, what is the police chief doing to stop the incidents which warrant a lawsuit? You know, my Uncle Albert, Bill Knapp's father, one time told me something and I took it to heart. If you have a problem, find the cause. Mm-hmm. If you eliminate the cause, you have solved the problem or prevented the problems. The chiefs in this state, but for bargaining units, contracts, have the ability to stop these incidents.
And I would say, like in Connecticut, they decided that too many people were suing doctors. You know, doctors don't have qualified immunity, and too many people were suing doctors, and their malpractice insurance rates went up. So tort reform in Connecticut consists of, before you can sue a medical provider for malpractice, you have to get a letter, a certificate of negligence from an expert. Now you can white out that expert's name. It has to be another medical provider in a same field or similar field, same field, and you have to actually file that with the complaint. Okay, take away police officers' immunity. And, you know, I'm sure they blame attorneys for all the lawsuits. They don't blame the conduct of the officer. They blame the money-hungry attorneys. Well, impose something like that then. Make an attorney find an expert in the same field as who that officer is who will certify that there's negligence there and hold that person accountable. There are things we can do.
Continue next week.
Have a good week.